The Piscatorial Podcast.
This week's weather has been like perfect carpy conditions, really, with a big southwesterly coming in. I don't know what your sort of...
I stepped outside on Sunday. We've got like 55 mile an hour winds or something, and it was the first time this year that I walked outside, and I sort of like I could feel it. I was like, carp! Like I need to go carp fishing. It was literally the first time that I had the urge properly. Because before that, we just had these horrible easterly winds, and I just, I'd had such a full-on winter.
Yeah.
I was just kind of recharging my batteries, and I haven't really had the urge to get out. But when I could hear the wind in the trees, and it reminds you of all them good sessions. You think, I need to go fishing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm a big believer in like a new wind. It doesn't necessarily have to be a new warm wind, but a warm wind is always better. But I think even a new cold wind, if we've had a southwesterly for weeks and weeks, a new cold one coming in, big one, that can produce as well. There's a lot of believers and like non-believers of the old wind. What's your sort of view on it?
I found venues respond differently to different winds. You get some venues where literally any new wind, you've got to fish. You've just got to get involved. Linear used to be a perfect example of it. You'd ring Roy Parsons and he'd be like, "Don't bother coming, mate. There's no wind." And if you rang him, and you could sometimes you ring him, you could hear the wind in those big trees at Linear. You could hear it in the background, and you'd just be like, are you on your way? And when are you getting here? But then I've fished places where, unless it's like a bang-on warm westerly or something, the lake is just completely soulless. Yeah.
Have you ever found... Do you find... Because I always find it doesn't really affect the smaller waters as well.
To some extent, yeah. I think if you've got some really carpy conditions, I mean, like big southerlies, the kind where you're in your bivvy sort of thinking, I hope nothing falls down. In those conditions, I found small venues switch on first, and it seems to be the same every spring. Like we've just had this real big weather front come through, big winds, it's really sort of shook the fish up a little bit. Everybody I know who's fishing a small venue has had it off. Everybody I know who's on a big venue, one guy's had it off.
Right. Okay.
So it's a bit more spread out evenly on a small venue. They tend to, especially in the spring, that first, it doesn't even need to be that warm. Just that first wind from the right direction just livens them all up. I know I've spent a lot of winters on the bank on small venues for carp. I don't do it anymore, but I used to spend a lot of time. Used to fish Rob Hughes' Lake Birchwood, which is only small. Fishing places like Western Park, which is not a big lake at all. It's small, it's shallow. And if you got those, double figure air temperatures, they just switch on so fast. And it's like fishing in the middle of spring. Yeah. Only you've got more layers on.
Yeah. I think that big southwesterly coming in, looking at the long forecast as well, we've seen the end of the frosts now. It looks like it's going to be some much better weather coming in, so hopefully everything starts waking up. And because the trees around here still look bare. I'm driving down the road today, looking at them, they're all brown. There's barely any leaves on them and stuff. So anyway, Matt Woods, welcome to the Piscatorial Podcast. First of all, props to the t-shirt. It's repping the Fanter gear. What a legend. Yeah.
I've worn this loads.
I've
worn it absolutely loads since you sent it, yeah.
Oh, I'm glad, mate.
Because I'm quite supportive of what you and your mates are doing with Fanter. I think it's ace. I think course fishing needs things like this podcast, like what you guys are doing on social media. Because otherwise it's just the same old elder statesmen doing the same old things and talking about the same old stuff.
Yeah.
You see it in carp fishing. Carp fishing's ahead of the curve with all this sort of online media stuff. Lure fishing's getting there. There's a bit more going on in the UK. There's a bit more going on with podcasts with people like Alan Jones. Really good anglers and good conversationalists. Mm-hmm. But in course fishing, there's not really anything like it yet, is there?
No, there's definitely, I think, a gap there, and it's definitely getting more popular. I get quite a bit of feedback from people who are like, I've never been out targeting bream, never thought of doing it, but can I get some advice? Or, I see them cracking rudd you had the other week. I fancy a bit of that. Like, I'm not going to give them the secret honey holes, but I'll definitely do my best to help. It's nice to see that, the word influencer gets thrown around so much, but actually, legitimately, we influence people to go out and do it and continue the sport and enjoy themselves. So it's good. But, so you're the product manager of Korum?
I'm the brand manager, which is, I suppose, a little bit more in depth than just working on product development. But obviously, the product choice and development occupies a lot of that role. So from a working perspective, the majority of my week is spent, knee deep in product, in fishing tackle, talking about it, thinking about it, sending a million emails off to suppliers all around the world to try and get what you want. And as you know, I quite like consultation. I'm on WhatsApp with my whole life, messaging people whose opinion I value. And I like to bang, I'm not one of these product guys who sits there and thinks about these amazing ideas like a crazy professor in the shed. That's not me, but I do listen, I'm a good talker, but I also like to think I'm a good listener, and I like to surround myself with people who I can bounce off and just say, what do you think about it? Does that look any good? Is that cool? And quite often you'll show somebody an idea or a thought that's kicking around, and you ask the right person, and all of a sudden you end up with a killer product. Yeah.
So, how did you sort of stumble into that career?
Well, I was a journalist. So when I left college, I went and did my journalism training. With the NCTJ, with the Midlands Association, so I was a reporter. It's all I ever wanted to do. All I ever wanted to do was write. Once I got into journalism, I still do now. I absorb so much content of the written word in all its various forms. I love magazines. I love news. I love politics. I love the craft of it all.
You love a meme?
I do love a meme, and I liked the sort of the truth-seeking element. Although never let the truth get in the way of a good story. I'll stand by that as well. Yeah. It was good to have. I was quite wordy at school. Yeah. I liked English literature. I used to read a lot, and I used to use all these big words that nobody understood, and it was just me being a pretentious young teenager. Yeah. And going to journalism college beat that out of me. It really did. And teach you how to use 5 words instead of 50. And I really enjoyed that. When I went to go and work at a proper newspaper, you realise how big an entity that is. You've got a desk full of reporters, a desk full of sub-editors, a news desk separate to that. Then you've got the editor, chief editor. You've got all the advertising people. It's this massive, big moving animal with so many parts. And I thought that's what I was going to do forever, until one day I opened up. I can't remember if it was Crafty Carper or Carp World, and Joe Wright. There was this piece in there from Simon Crowe saying, "We wish Joe Wright all the best. He's going travelling around the world." But of course he wasn't. He was going to start Carpology magazine, but they didn't know that. I didn't know that. But I thought, I could do that. So I sent my CV off to Anglo Publications. I went for an interview at Tim Paisley's house on my 20th birthday. Which was he was one of my heroes. He still is now. Tim is a living legend in every respect of the word. And sitting in his house, he signed his book for me. And I drove away from Sheffield. I didn't care if I got the job or not. Just that moment would have been enough. But as it was, I ended up going to work at Angling Publications. So I started as assistant editor, and then ended up being given, a lot more control. I was only young, but a bit of an old head on my shoulders. I got quite a lot of experience in what I was doing, and obviously I loved carp fishing. I was just obsessed with it. I still am now, but I was totally obsessed with it, and I was there for nearly 4 years. And then it was really weird. I started to feel guilty about not being a journalist properly anymore. It didn't start to feel not like proper journalism, because most of the articles you were writing with an angler, because that angler was sponsored by somebody who spent money in the magazine. It just felt a bit hollow. And an old friend of mine invited me to go and work for a sort of country lifestyle type magazine back in Shropshire. So, 2 reasons for moving. I could move back home, see my family. I was moving out. I hated living in a city. I'm a country boy. I can't live in a city. So I was back in Shropshire, and back, doing something that I really loved. There was a lot more craftsmanship to the writing. And, one week I'd be interviewing somebody like a rock legend like Robert Plant, because he was really into sort of sustainability and, sort of renewable energy and all these kind of things that were going off in Wales at the time. And then the next minute I might be on the phone with Matt Tebbett, the TV chef. It was so eclectic, and literally every day was different. Yeah. And my fishing became my fishing again. And I started carp fishing places in Shropshire, which Ellis will tell you were difficult, where you had fewer fish than there were acres. Yeah. And, I really absorbed myself into that kind of fishing because I could. I loved the job that I was doing. It wasn't very well paid, but I didn't really care. As long as I had enough money to put fuel in the car, buy a couple of bags of peanuts and a case of beer and get to the lake, that was fine. Yeah. But then, as I said before, I was fishing Rob Hughes' lake quite a bit. And Rob at the time was doing Angling International with John Jones, John Shoes Jones. Well, they were working on Venture Carp. Do you remember Venture? They did the Razorback Bivvy and all that. Well, Shoes is that crazy professor in the shed who's got more ideas than he knows what to do with. I mean, he's one of the best for coming up with something innovative. It's a subjective word, that, but he's got it. That edge to think about outside the box. Yeah. And David Preston saw the glimmer in John. He'd always wanted to start a carp brand, and so he employed John. So, John's now employed by Press Innovations Limited. I'm carrying on doing what I'm doing. John had always been a fan of my written work, the stuff that I used to do for the country magazine and that kind of thing. We did quite a lot of articles together when I worked at Crafty as well. And I was fishing at a place, I won't name the lake because the locals won't thank me if I do. We'll call it the Abyss. Yeah. I was fishing one day, I'd caught a fish, and Shoes came to see me. And he's rummaged around in his pocket, and he's shown me a sight stop. Remember the original Avid Carp sight stops? Yeah. What do you think of that? Yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. I put one on. That looks cool. And he told me about what was going on and blah, 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 David Preston, all the backstory, Didn't think nothing of it. Next week, I'm there again. I literally hadn't, at the time, no misses, nothing, no prospects outside of what I was already doing. So I was fishing again, and John came to see me again. He's like, I've been speaking to David. How do you fancy coming to work for us? I said, to do what? And he said, just to do what you do, but for us. And, turn it into this media and marketing sort of role. Because at the time, Corda, I think maybe Fox as well, but it was definitely Corda. They were like the first people to have a dedicated media guy who would go out and photograph and write features and give them to the magazines for free, oven ready. So I initially started at Avid doing that. Avid, I mean, they hadn't even got a product. There was a couple of bed chairs they were working on, these side stops and corn stops, and that was about it, really. It wasn't even a brand. It's like, oh, just come and work for us, you know. And I sensed that it was an opportunity that if I passed it up, I would have regretted it. And it was kind of, you know, I did miss being in the industry with all the other carp anglers sort of thing. So obviously I went back. I was definitely Mr. Suggestion Box those first couple of years. You know, I wasn't afraid to say what I thought and what direction I thought things needed to go. And at the time, Korum hadn't got anybody solely in charge of it. It was just kind of something that everybody collectively gave some input to. So it didn't get that much attention. It had a lot of attention when it was building up. Paul Garner was there shortly before me for like 1 year or something. That was it. When Korum kind of went away from commercial carp fishing type stuff and went a bit more green, a bit more specialist specimen fishing. So I was at work one day and they asked me, "We want you to do Korum." I was like, "Okay, what does that mean?" what does that mean? I was like, "Well, we want you to get involved, you know, start learning about the product development process." Because, you know, I have to say this, in them first couple of years, I really had no idea what I was doing. But fortunately, some of the people that work at Preston Innovations, a lot of them are still there today. In fact, most of them are still there today. They're about as good as it gets on the product side. And, you know, got to work with some really talented, dynamic, innovative people who could just pull it out of you. Yeah. And, you know, I won't lie about it. For a few years, I felt really out of my depth. You know, I didn't feel like I was doing Korum justice. But, of course, as you go along, and like I say, consultation is great. We've got one mouth, two ears for a reason. Just listening and absorbing from the sales guys, the product guys, the consultants. You know, just going into tackle shops and listening, all of a sudden it started to make a lot more sense. And then that's when it became more of a brand manager role, where you're looking at the whole picture, the brand image, the product mix, and all the sort of commercial aspects that are important to the brand. So I've gone on a bit there, Matt, but it's was a brief history, believe it or not.
No, it's good, mate. And obviously, there's a lot of people out there. Most anglers, it's their dream to work in the fishing industry, and sometimes some of them people could be my friends or whatever, and I think, I don't know, have they got? I don't think every angler has got what it takes to work in the industry, for two reasons. One, because they haven't got that drive like you clearly have, and two, because I think that it might ruin their fishing as well. So obviously you sort of touched on the fact that you got your fishing back when you went back to the country magazine. Are you still, now you're in the industry again, is your fishing still all right?
Yeah, the only time when the lines got really blurred again was a number of years ago. Is when John Shoes Jones left the business. I'd been with Avid, or part of Avid, from the beginning. Was starting to prove myself with Korum. You know, they were quite impressed with what I was doing. I got asked to do both brands. Can you do both? Of course, yeah, great.
Yeah.
And in the first year, we had a lot of fun. Me and Jason Umney, who was doing the media stuff at the time, we had a lot of fun because it was almost like a blank template again. When John left, there was like one product on the table in development. There wasn't really anything there. Yeah. So we kind of like had to start from scratch. And you know, my experience from the media journalism side of things married really well with Jason's, because Jason used to work for Total Carp. So he got it, you know, that media marketing side of things, he got it probably better than anybody I know on the carp side. He really did understand it. And I think he understood what I was trying to do with Avid and where we were trying to get it to. And at that time, we didn't have anybody to like film anything. So our graphic designer at the time, Pete, was like, "Do you reckon you could learn how to film and edit stuff?" Yeah, of course. So we started making. We made it a DVD. You know, we'd go out and do these shoots. And everything was planned, and you know, we were really lucky. You know, I think on every shoot that I was involved in, where I was on the camera as well as sort of directing it, got really lucky with the fish we caught, which helps. Because all of a sudden, we got momentum. We created this thing called the Next Level. I don't know if you remember it. That we just ran an advert called the Next Level, and everyone was like, "What's that? What's the next level? What is it?" And then the next product was the benchmark bed chair.
Yeah.
In the bedroom, making it look like it was in the bedroom. It was actually shot in Jason's living room.
Yeah.
But we really wanted to like unplug Avid from its quagmire that it was in, and give it the attention it deserved. And we had to really think outside the box. And every advert we did was designed to grab somebody's attention. Like we did a rod advert that had a Formula One car in it.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with fishing rods, but it was like, how can we make a statement? We launched the bucket stand, and in the advert it was full of ice and a champagne flute, shot in a hotel in Telford somewhere. You know, everything we were doing was designed to just get somebody to stop and go, that's the next level. That's what these guys are bringing.
Yeah.
And as time wore on, you know, our business went through a big jump period at that time. You know, sales were great across all of the brands. I started to get too sidetracked with Avid. Korum sort of fell to the back of my mind, and it wasn't getting the attention again that it deserves. And Avid, I was sort of blinkered by it. And basically, all of my fishing was Avid. It was all about the brand. Even in my own fishing, it wasn't about me. It was about Avid and how can I promote Avid today? What could I film or photograph or do to sell more fishing gear and get people to start taking this brand seriously again?
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously, as you get bigger and you get more personnel, Ant Molyneux came to work for us, who was doing filming full time. Adam Firth, who'd been doing the sort of media side of things for Korum, they did all this training so they could be self-sufficient filming and editing, and all of a sudden it just got really big. And you know, I'll admit it was a bit much for me. It was beyond. You couldn't do what you wanted to do for both brands.
Yeah.
Each brand needed its individual attention from somebody. And we had a new boss come back into the business at the time, and he sat down with me and he started speaking openly about different things, and he's like, "Which one do you want to do? Because I think you know, and I definitely know, you need to pick."
Yeah.
And with Korum, I always felt like I could be objective with Korum because I wasn't a Korum specimen angler. My own fishing, my opinion about fishing or how to fish, never interferes with Korum product development, brand development, marketing. It just doesn't. But with Avid it did. I could sit there with somebody with 30 years more carp fishing experience than me and tell them they were wrong.
Yeah.
Which was the wrong, that's, you're too close to it then. For me personally, you know, everybody's different. You know, literally everybody who does these kind of roles in the business will tell you a different story and they see it differently. But I love fishing. I love it. I'm obsessed by it. And I just didn't want fishing to be work.
Yeah.
And it comes, you know, a lot of people, like you said before, think, "Oh yeah, being a fisherman and, you know, I get to go fishing every day and working in the fishing industry." There's an awful lot of people come into this industry and never fish again.
Yeah.
We've certainly got people who work at our place who just, ever since they started working for us, they just don't really go fishing anymore.
Yeah.
And that's how they deal with it. It becomes a profession rather than a hobby. Whereas for me, if I'm working on Korum, the two are always separate. And when I go fishing, I never think about work ever.
Yeah.
Totally
So you chose Korum and eliminated that sort of conflict of interest, and it freed up.
Totally, yeah. And it meant that, you know, I could sit there daydreaming about going carp fishing and think about what I was going to do when I was going carp fishing, and none of the products we were working on got anything to do with it. So it was, I could sit with somebody like Gary Knowles and we'd be talking about pike fishing products, and I know for a fact he knows more than me.
Yeah.
But he also respects that I have to make the commercial decision, and that kind of two-way street, that dialogue that I have with all of the Korum guys to different levels, that's the thing that I really enjoy, and how I'm able to balance it out so well. It's a good tactic, and Dave Preston was the master at it. Find people who are better than you at it and ask them to do it.
That's a good bit of advice, mate. So what advice would you give to people who, or maybe a warning as well, to people who want to get into the industry and they're seriously thinking about doing it themselves?
You just being a good fisherman is not enough, but it does draw attention. You know, we're sort of at the stage now where I take Korum's media guy, Rob, is a great example. He was a sponsored angler who was making his own videos. He was literally a walking advert for Korum. I don't think he owned anything that wasn't Korum. You know, I think he used to sit and etch Korum into his toothbrush just so it matched everything else. You know, he was Mr. Korum. And, you know, he was an impressive young man when I met him. He's from a similar sort of neck of the woods to me, so, you know, we culturally, I guess we're on the same level to some extent. And he got an eye for stuff. And that was kind of, because we knew we want to take somebody on, and we're going to teach them how to film and edit and manage the social media and all of those kind of things. So it's more, so you've got to have that base, that skills base in the first place. So just living on the bank all the time, I don't think brands are going to come knocking and go, oh, can you be the new Darryl Peck for us? Yeah. It's rare. It's not really going to happen. ESP aren't looking for the next Terrier. They've already got Terrier. So they don't want Terrier light. Much in the same way that, you know, we don't want a lesser version of Matt Hayes or John Wilson, you know, because they're up there. You know, that's a totally different thing. Yeah, they are. And so, you know, certainly at the moment, if you look at the really big brands, Fox International, great example, their media team is bigger than most companies' entire team. Right. You know, I think they took on like 18 new media people across Europe last year. So if you want to get into the industry, learn how to take photos, film stuff, edit it, get to grips with social media, build a following, and you'll get noticed. Yeah. And, you know, even if it starts just with a sponsorship, so a bit of free tackle or whatever, be communicative with the brand guys, because you'll find a lot of them are like me. They're kind of waiting for people to come to them, because we're so busy. Yeah. You know, I would love to every day ring the entire Korum consultancy team. I would love to ring every salesman at Preston Innovations. I'd love to walk in every office at work and speak to everybody, because when you absorb all that information, it's really, really powerful. Yeah. But it only works if it's a two-way street. Yeah. So if you've got a sponsored angler who thinks just going fishing and posting your pictures going to cut the mustard, it really isn't. It's about more than that, and certainly with brands like Korum, Preston Innovations is a family of brands. They're not fishing tackle companies; it's brands. We're a sales and marketing machine first. The product development, innovation, all that kind of thing. It has to be as good as it is to support that machine. Otherwise, you're marketing nothing. It's just fluff. It's not, oh, here's a 50 quid rod. Why is it better than everything else? Oh, it's great value for the money. My least favourite saying in the world. So that's the best thing I can say about a product. It ain't worth it.
Yeah.
So yeah, keep talking. That's the thing, you know. And I was given some good advice. You know, I started angler publications very early. I was only 20. I think Tim said to me, you know, be careful whose path you cross on the way up, because you don't know who you might need on the way down.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there's a lot of people who've had a bad fall from grace in the fishing industry because they didn't heed that advice. You know, I like to think I'm, you know, in good friendly speaking terms with most of the people I've ever met in this industry. There are very few bad eggs in the industry. The ones that there are easy to spot, and people will warn you about it. But yeah, I just, you know, keep your eyes open, your ears open for opportunities, and a bit like, you know, if I was to give somebody any kind of job experience, you know, don't just take the first opportunity that comes, because you can end up working or being sponsored by a company. It's actually going to tarnish your reputation for being sponsored by the big guys. Yeah. So, you know, don't take the sponsorship agreement from the small European tackle brand that's trying to make a name for itself in the UK. Wait. Yeah. You know, if you've got somebody in mind, you can almost court the brand. Yeah. You know, if you love thinking anglers, if literally every picture in your Instagram feed is about thinking anglers tackle, like, you know, sort of carpy rig shots and then some fish pictures, and you've got one of the caps on, it won't take them guys that thinking anglers long to recognise who you are. Yeah. And I've seen that happen with loads and loads of younger guys who have gone on to get, you know, jobs at these companies. Yeah. Because they've just, I want to be that kind of angler, or I want to be seen to be that kind of guy. When you're talking about brands, somebody like me who holds their fish up with a big cheesy grin every single time, probably not going to get courted by all the carpy brands, am I?
I think it's important to stick to who you are, though, because a wrong un smelt a mile off, you know. For example, Korum, Fish for Everything, if someone was really trying to become a Korum-sponsored angler, but it was very obvious that they only fish for carp or something like that, and they were or for perch, and it was really obvious that they were pushing themselves to go and fish for other species just so they could try and get on board. It sticks out like a sore thumb. The people who actually enjoy it, you can really tell, I think.
Yeah, and I quite like, at the moment, I think, I'll include you in this, Matt. You know, you get a bit of stuff from Korum for the stuff that you do. You're still free to promote whoever else. But I really like the young, not necessarily the younger guys, but the guys who are kind of newer to fishing for everything. All of those big fish that some of our guys like Gary Knowles, Ed Matthews, you know, they've already caught them. Yeah. These guys haven't caught them yet, and I want to be almost part of that journey with them, because I think the public will be with you as well. Yeah. You know, you get a little bit of holier than thou stuff going on with specimen fishing. There's nothing wrong with it. If you won't get out of bed unless the fish is going to break the personal best, that's your choice. Mm-hmm. That is totally up to you. If you don't want to join a venue because there isn't a fish in there bigger than one you've caught before, that's up to you. Great, you know, if you're that kind of angler. But you know, I like to have the balance with Korum. I quite like these guys who are going to be at that level in 20 years' time, and let's be part of the journey together for those 20 years, and let's take all those guys who are hashtagging Fish for Everything with us.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. So talking about like products and bits and pieces like that, I wanted to talk to you about, over the years, obviously you've been involved in hundreds and products. There's got to have been some great ones, but I'm sure there's probably been some ones that you look back and cringe about that maybe didn't make the cut.
Yeah, there are a couple that I wouldn't say I'm proud of them. I remember them more because, like I said to you before, a lot of these development ideas and things, they don't come from me. I'm the filter. I'm the sponge and the filter for all these other ideas. And of course, there's a lot of products where you're kind of plagiarising somebody else's stuff, but you're making it fit for Korum. So, an opportunist XTND rod, for instance, it's a scope, but it's not. It's not, is it? I mean, you've had one of those in your hands. You know.
Yeah.
It's run differently, the action is different, all the test curves are different, the length of the handle is different. We've Korumized it.
Yeah.
And, that's not a product that really stands out for me. It does at the moment because we're selling loads, but it's a good example of how certain products, they don't have to be like a eureka moment in your bath to be successful.
Yeah.
But there have been a few of the original grub feeder. That's one that really stands. That was my first big selling product. Totally new. There was nothing really like it out there. And we actually made it from, the blister packaging for a method feeder.
Yeah.
Just cut out the outside of the blister packaging and hinged it. And I'm like, look, you can fill this and the maggots can't get out because they're in your hand.
Yeah.
And then we put the little clip on the top. That kind of came about from some of the Korum lads used to do that with the feeders, a little piece of foam with a slit in it. And all of a sudden we had this product and let me tell you, it sold like hotcakes. Better than hotcakes. It was just insane. They couldn't make them fast enough. We just went absolutely ballistic. And that was kind of like my first big number product. That as a product category, a little group of feeders, of like 4 or 5 feeders, we used to sell loads of them. Loads and loads of them. There's quite a few products. The Fast Mat is the one I like at the moment. That was just after my eldest was born. We went on holiday and I was Googling for something to put Florence in on the beach.
Yeah.
And I found this thing and it looked like a Fast Mat, but it was round. It got more sides. It was like a funny shape.
Yeah.
So I bought one, trying to figure out, can you do this so it looks like an Unlucky mat, not one of these? Sent it to the supplier with a sketch, and the first couple of versions you couldn't get them to fold. They were just like a wrestling match. And we finally figured out the sort of proportions and the sides had to have this hinge in for it to work properly. And it was one of them when you got the sample out of the bag and you just went, like the Fast Mat does, just like a pop-up tent. And everybody who was in the room at the time just sort of looked and went, oh, hell yeah. Oh, yeah. Because you just knew that it was going to fly. But I particularly like that product, not because it's clever. It is a clever product. But there are lots of that kind of clever product in the marketplace. In fishing and outside of fishing, pop-up stuff. But it was what it did for Korum as a brand, where most of our Unlucky mats are just little roll mats, it was all... This was kind of like a proper Unlucky mat that was also a roving mat. It was really light and fast and you could clip it to the bag, and that luggage system that we'd developed, it sort of completed it a little bit. And doing the Fast Mat helped us sell more luggage, which puts more full Rob Hall, Korum style anglers on the bank. Yeah. And you'd have seen it yourself, Matt. You go to a tent venue, a cruising venue, or to a river, and the brand you see the most is Korum. Yeah. And there are certain products we do that stand out. No one else does them. They're ours. Yeah. And the Fast Mat's definitely one of them.
Yeah, I think most anglers can say at some point in, especially my generation, if I say to people, have you ever had anything Korum branded? Oh yeah, I had a Korum chair like when I was growing up, and bought a Korum net from the car boot sale or something. Everyone's had something Korum, so it's definitely stable now, and it's a brand that people know, and
and going back to what you asked before, we've had a few stinkers.
Yeah.
And quite often it's been more risky products. You think this could really, you can't not order lots because it might be really popular. And you do it and it's not. And then you're like, it feels like a bit of a damp squib because all of a sudden you're thinking, well, based on how many we're selling a month, there's about 3-4 years worth of that left.
Yeah.
And of course, that 3 or 4 years gets worse as you go along because you start. The older it is, the worse it gets. But been lucky for the most part because of the filter.
Yeah.
You know, like I said to you before, at Preston, we're surrounded by people who have an opinion and not afraid to tell you what they think about stuff. They'll, polish the corners off for you and get things better. And quite often, those products that should never have got to market don't get there. But it should never stop you working on it. I always say there's no such thing as a bad idea. Yeah. Just some aren't as good.
Just don't have 5 bad ideas in a row. So I don't want to dwell too much on the whole COVID thing and all that, but I did want to just pick your brains because I know we've spoke about it a couple of times, especially with the shipping bits and pieces and thing. But I just wanted to know how COVID has affected Korum as a brand, because I know obviously we're all aware there's winners and losers in the fishing industry with the COVID, and unfortunately there weren't all winners. But how's Korum been affected?
I think, well, from a sales perspective, we're having an amazing time. I have to pinch myself. It is so good. Don't get me wrong, I would swap that level of success for all them people still being alive and being able to go out in the ice and not wear a mask and all that, all that sort of thing. But for the fishing tackle industry benefited a lot from COVID purely and simply because it was something people could do that they felt safe doing because they were outside. Yeah. And I think a lot of people reconnected with fishing. You obviously had a lot of new anglers as well, but it was more important that people who fish. Are you a fisherman? Yeah, I'm a fisherman. When was the last time you went? You can't even remember the last time they bought a license. Yeah. That changed, and then all of a sudden those people started going a bit more often. I think the people who were keen fishermen went more often and upgraded either as an angler or with the tackle they wanted to use and buy. And you know what it's like if you start spending a bit of time on something and getting really into something, you spend a bit more money on it, don't you? Whether it's golf, making podcasts, filming, it doesn't matter, does it? Whatever it is, some of my mates who tell me how much they just pay for a mountain bike, I'm like, I bought a car for that much, what are you on about? So it's come with some logistical issues because obviously it's a global issue. Yeah. And the main issue at the moment is the supply. You can imagine that for as popular as fishing has become in the UK, imagine what it's like in the US.
Where we forget about that sort of thing.
Yeah, and in the US, their recruitment work to get more people fishing is really, really strong before COVID. So you can imagine for them, it was like, well, we've already got the tap turned on, and now the audience has literally just turned to look at us at the right moment. And they've really had a great time. Europe is kind of the same. The restrictions are different in lots of different countries. That really benefited Korum because there was a lot of Korum anglers. They don't know that they're a Korum angler yet because we've got 20 years of product, marketing, branding in the UK. In Hungary, they only started selling Korum in Hungary like 2 or 3 years ago properly. And so all of a sudden you get this quantum leap where they go from spending this much money to whoa. Yeah. Because instead of just stocking a Korum accessory chair and a few quick stops and a few feeders, the ink blots, through the catalogue and think, I'll take a river tripod, I'm going to take a few of them barber rods, I'm going to take a few of them, and all of a sudden they've got the full program in the shop.
Yeah.
And our sales in Europe now are in a really, really great place, and as long as we can keep supplying them, we'll be happy.
Yeah.
I think the reality of COVID in the countries where most of this tackle is made, I think the situation is worse than anybody really knows. And that's the lead times have just got really long. So we've never polished the crystal ball so hard to try and figure out how much do you order of anything.
Yeah.
Because when everything's selling at twice, 3 times the rate that it used to, because there's more people fishing, you're in more countries, there's more demand for your product. The brand's really escalated. We've had the rocket burners on for the last 2 years. We had momentum anyway, but now it's just gone into hyperdrive.
Yeah. I'm guessing that's probably been similar for most of the brands out there as well.
I hope so. Matt, because it means that there's still market share for us to steal from a professional standpoint. But from a personal standpoint, it means that the retention of all those new anglers has been really good, and there's lots of people getting into fishing. I still believe there's people buying licenses now that didn't buy one last year. You know what it's like yourself. You start fishing, your mate takes an interest, and his mate takes an interest, and his brother wants to go, and then his missus is coming with him, and then so and so wants to go, and all of a sudden, same sort of in-blotting situation.
Yeah,
it's like. And you get people who, they might start out just faffing about on a commercial venue, but then they might catch like a big carp or something and think, that was ace.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you want to get into carp fishing, how good is it now for someone who wants to get into carp fishing?
Oh, yeah. Everything's ready-made.
In the past, you'd have to buy every carp fishing magazine there was, a couple of Tim Paisley's books to figure out, what the hell is all this stuff about? It seems really technical. Whereas now the information is literally everywhere. It's really good. That's the thing. It's still, there's the basic content, there's slightly more in-depth content, the really edgy content. And, I know a few friends of mine who started fishing last year who have now got more gear for carp fishing than I have.
Yeah.
And they've gone from becoming a fisherman to becoming a carp angler.
Yeah.
And equally, I know people who've got back into fishing because they're competitive. So, can I do this and earn some money as well? Yeah. And they start off on an open match. It's £20 a go on the weekend somewhere, and all of a sudden they've got 3 gram pole, carbon seat box, the full do. And I think that's great for fishing because it's never ever been better to get into it and then go up through the levels.
Yeah.
And find your place. You said it before. Stay true to yourself, whatever you. And you're probably the same as me, man. You'll know people who don't really know where they are yet. Even now, been fishing for 10, 20, 30 years. They still don't really know.
Yeah.
But that COVID has been good for getting people outside and getting people fishing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think saying about the abundance of information out there, it's only there if you look for it, though. I mean, an example of that is I've been helping out a local fishery, carp fishery near me. As you know, I've been doing a bit of carp fishing this spring. I thought I'd give the tench a rest and have a little go for the carp. And one of the guys, I've been showing my face down the same lake, been chatting to the owner and that, and he's like, you know what you're doing, and you're a nice bloke. Could you fancy helping out with a bit of bailiffing, and maybe you can come and fish down here and not have to pay? And it's like, yeah, of course, mate. It's like nice to get out of the house, 10 minutes away, but the rigs I'm walking around and checking are disgraceful. And I said to the owner, we should put, because he don't know, he's like, he's got all the rules there, but people don't read them, And I said, we need a little display, the death rig wall of shame, and just leave them on there, and just, these are legitimate rigs we've taken off people. But I just say to people, look, go onto YouTube or Google and type in helicopter rig. You will find out everything about a helicopter rig from 10 different brands, and it will even tell you probably the history of who created it and why, and the various different ways you can do it. The information's there, and that wasn't there before. Do you know, I'm guilty. When I look back, when I first started fishing, I got most of my knowledge from magazines passed down from my dad's work colleagues. But I'd get dropped off at the lake and go and pester people. Do you know, I'd hate to be me fishing with younger me, keep coming around the lake going, hello mate, how you getting on? Like just sitting there talking about stuff. What rigs are you? I didn't care, mate. I had no filter. What rigs are you using then? What size hook's that? And I'd be remembering it all up here. And I'm like, okay, where are you putting your bait? And just draining people and boring them to death until they're like, do you want a pack of these hooks, mate? Yeah, yes, please, mate. Yeah.
But you'd have made a good journalist, Matt, because I was exactly the same. I still am now. Still to this day. I know when to turn it on. And obviously there's a lot more tact to it these days. When to start interrogating. Because you know, and a good piece of advice for anybody who fishes is never assume that you know everything, because you really don't. There's always somebody who knows it better than you, or certainly knows it better than you at that moment in time.
Yeah.
You know, and I've met a lot of carp anglers, river anglers, you know, and they get on a hot streak, and you just have to go and ask them what they're doing, what the thought process is, and just even if you just sit there and watch them. Yeah. You can learn so much by just, you know, if somebody's catching a few fish, go and watch. If you're at the other end of the lake, and like a lot of day ticket lakes, you can't move. Put a bit of bait in and just leave your swim for 24 hours even, you know, just leave it. Go. The bloke who's absolutely tatering on the other end, just go and watch it.
Yeah.
Now, I went to carp fishing university by going to work for Angling Publications, because every week I was going fishing 3 times on average with somebody who was mustard at it, you know. They were the best carp anglers out there. A lot of them are still the best carp anglers out there right now as well. And, you know, you could just spend time with these guys. Quite often might drive all the way down to Kent, stop overnight and not even fish. Yeah. Because you're just sitting and listening and watching and learning and asking, probing, and you come away, and that weekend you go fishing, you kind of put what you think you've learned into practice, and you start catching some fish. And I think a lot of people might, because the information now that is so readily available, you could watch 2 videos, get the wrong end of the stick, go fishing and not ask someone, and until somebody points it out to you, you would just never know that you were doing it wrong.
Yeah, I remember that with
so
zig
much
fishing.
Bank hours is so important.
Yeah, I remember that with zig fishing years and years ago when I sort of first got into it. I was looking at, this was still in, there was YouTube about then, so there was a couple of videos, they're both similar, and then I went out and tried it and didn't have no joy. And then eventually there was someone else clearing up on the lake on zigs, and I just said, mate, come and have a look at what I'm doing wrong, do you know? I actually weren't doing anything wrong, but I think it was that reassurance that what I was doing was correct was enough for me to go, right, I'm happy about it then. 3 rods out, they're staying. Do you know? I had that little reassurance to say, you're not a muppet, you are doing it right, it's pretty simple.
Well, there's a lot to be said for those, like the little things, the very little things. I'll give you a good example. We with Korum, we've got quite a good relationship with the tench fishers, and they had like an anniversary do, and they invited everybody to go down and fish horseshoe, tench fishing. Yeah. There's loads of people fishing, and I was really lucky. I was fishing with probably the best tench angler of all time, Di Gribble, who at the time was on that streak. If he went if he went in the spring, everybody else on the lake is just like, oh, he's going to have it away and I'm not. And that happened everywhere he went. Even on the big, massive lakes where there was nobody else tench fishing, he would just turn up and it would just happen for him, because he just, at that moment in time, he just got it. And, you know, I'm literally fishing right next to him. And, you know, I'm not ashamed to say that when I cast out, every time I cast out, I got a little bit closer to where he was fishing. I had the same rigs on, the same bait, same feeders. Rods weren't the same, but that doesn't help you catch any fish, does it? Literally, I'm just replicating, I'm just imitating him.
Yeah.
But he had like 10 fish and I had 1. I think he single-handedly won the Korum versus the tench fishers banter sort of match that we were having. He didn't need anybody else to catch anything, he just did it all himself. And, for 48 hours, I'm just watching him and thinking, it's just so well rehearsed. He'd got the muscle memory, every cast, it was one cast, it was never two. The rig, he knew when to change it, he just knew when to swap to a different bait, and he could sense how the patch was evolving and when to bait up and when to leave it, when to rest it. Whereas I'm like, I don't know, not a 10 channel, really not a 10 channel. I caught a few big ones by accident, but I really don't know what I'm doing. But I learned so much by just watching someone who was the master at it. Same with barbel fishing, with Korum, been out with some guys barbel fishing. People like Aid Cadell, they've forgotten more than I will ever learn about barbel fishing because of the bank hours, the venues they fish. They've caught so many fish over the years, you just can't ignore how good they are.
No, definitely.
And but spending time with those people makes a massive difference.
Yeah. Lovely. Well, Matt, I asked you to bring an item with you today, like we did with Nick. He brought his granddad's barge pole rod, so I'm excited to see what's.
Mine's not as big as a prop. There was a few different things that I thought about bringing for this, but I thought I'd bring the one that's the most rare.
Okay.
This is pretty rare. See what that is?
Is that a scale?
That is a scale from a 44-pound common carp that I was supposed to catch but didn't.
Right.
If anybody who knows me or might have followed me, my fishing escapades over the last sort of 10 years, I really wanted to catch this one particular common carp from Badenhall Quarry Pool in Staffordshire. It was just, for me, when I decide to fish a venue, it's usually because of a fish, one. And I was just obsessed with this one fish, trying to catch it. And the good thing about that particular lake, there's so many other fish to catch as well. There's so many other big fish, but that was the real jewel in the crown, the big girl, the big common.
Yeah.
And she wasn't perfect, but she was. For me, it was like, that was exactly what I wanted a big common carp to look like. And I really, really wanted to catch it. And I spent quite a few sessions there. I used to go quite a lot. When I first met my now wife, Amy, she was doing a nursing degree. I had a lot more time on my hands to go fishing. So most of my carp fishing is midweek. I'd go to Baden, and because it's a day ticket water, you've got a lot of anglers coming and going, but nobody's really fishing it regular. There aren't many people keeping in touch with it, and I knew that I could.
Yeah.
I'd always just do, for the most part, just do 24 hours. I'd rather do 2 24-hour trips in a month than 1 48, because it gave me 2 moments in time of being there. And it was so similar to the sort of gravel pit style fishing that I'd done when I worked at Angling Publications at places like Linear and Horseshoe and lakes like that. Weedy, clear, more of a gravel pit than, I think it's probably the only lake like that in the Staffordshire, Shropshire area. It's like a gravel pit. And I got to grips with it and caught a lot of fish. But I was always catching the 20s. I'd catch like 7 or 8 20s, and the bloke next to me would have like a 38-pounder. But I think that I prefer the 20s than the 38-pounders. That makes sense. I fish to catch as many as I can, and if the big ones come along, that's great.
Yeah.
But of course, over time, through spending time there, and the wonder of Facebook, if you're a big fish carp angler, I soon figured out this fish is the most predictable carp in the world. It came out at Easter 5 years in a row.
Yeah.
So and Easter moves, doesn't it? With the moon phase, it kind of moves with it. So it was always the same moon phase, always a similar sort of time of year, and it would always be the first time it got caught. and it was usually big because it's spring, you know. And I'm down there, and I've got 48 hours because I knew that she was coming out. I knew it. So I've done the first night, and I can't get data kit problems. Can't get on the fish. I'm trying my best, mind. There's a point swim there that I don't think I've fished it quite a bit, and I've never caught a carp from it. I've landed plenty of carp in the swim, but they weren't from out of my own swim. Yeah, it's a good Wolfgangian swim where you can just fish wherever you want. Yeah, and I just, even so, I couldn't take the mick any more than I already had. I just watched these fish all night in this swim. I'm like, right, in the morning I'll ring the office and ask them if they're leaving, can I move? And as it was, the lads in peg 5 and 6 were leaving. Now, from where I was on the other side of the lake, 90% of the shows were in peg 6. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm going in peg 6. I should have listened to myself because that fish had that spring capture 9 times out of 10 was out of peg 5. Yeah. But there were so many in peg 6. So I've gone in peg 6. Well, I'm going to go in peg 6. Get a phone call in the morning off a guy, Dave Bailey, and he says to me, "Oh, what are you up to? You know, this moon phase is really good. It's really good weather. You know." I said, "Oh mate, come down here. You know, there's like 7 or 8 pegs free, and then you'll be if you come down now today, you'll be able to get right on them." So Dave came down, and I had to make a decision. Do we go in peg 5 or do we go in peg 6? Of course, I went in peg 6 because there was fish everywhere. Dave comes down, and Dave, bless him, he got all these ideas in his head about how to catch a big one from the lake. He's like, I'm going to fish 10 yards out, the bottom of the slope, put a load of these 18mm boilies that Wayne Dunn's roll, proven big fish bait. He was going to fish like luncheon meat and something weird on the other rod. You know, he'd really thought about what he was going to do. Well, I'm there, and the wind changed slightly, and the fish did move in front of 5. There was one weed bed, probably not very big, size of a car, and they were there. Yeah, on a hatch, big time. Roy Russell had not long started working there as a bailiff. Roy's come down, and he looked out in the lake, and he seen one. Oh, you know, they were like, and they do in that show where you know they're on a hatch. You just see a little bit of them, don't you? It's not a proper big bosh. Yeah. And I'm sort of sat looking at my 2 rods, thinking, I couldn't fish any further in today's swim than I already was. Yeah. I was thinking, why am I getting a bite? They're so preoccupied on that one weed bed. And Dave's already got 2 rods out. Roy's gone to him. Have you got a zig on? And Dave's gone, no, why? Get a zig on. Well, I don't really want to reel them other rods in. It doesn't matter, you know. Because there's 2 rods only on bacon. It doesn't matter, just put a zig on. So Dave's rigged up another rod, and he's chucked this fish is nutted out, and he's chucked the rod, and it's literally landed in the last ripple of this fish. Me and Roy just, that knowing look. Yeah. Because we both knew the venue really well. Just both looked at each other thinking, that's within an hour, that's going. Yeah. Dave just put the rod on the floor. So we're chatting, as we do, having a bit of banter, all that sort of thing. And the rod just starts skipping down the grassy bank. And he's picked it up, and Dave had hardly done any zig fishing to this point, but he spent all winter at Drayton learning about it, fishing with lads who really understood it and getting to grips with it. So he's fishing really light. He's fishing 020 WB Carp mono, which is, that's brave. A lot of people don't go that. I go that light, but a lot of people go that light. Yeah. And as soon he's hooked into it, and he give it full test curve, and the rod's bent to the side, looking at me, and he's like, "This is massive." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a good chance, Dave, as half the fish in the lake are over 30 pounds. Yeah. Yeah. This is massive. And then the fish wasn't doing anything. Anybody who knew of this fish didn't fight, was not renowned for its battle. And most people who ever caught it, when you're reeling them in and you think, oh, it's come off. Oh no, it hasn't. That's come off. Oh no, it hasn't. Dave was like that all the way in. And I know the fish is at the bottom of the shelf. I could see it, and I thought, if I put my polaroids on now, all I'm going to do is confirm my worst suspicion of what's on the end. I'm looking. Dave's going, oh yeah, this just feels like a good fish. And I'm like screaming at him, like, just stop. He was pulling so hard.
Yeah.
In the excitement of it. I'm like, Dave, just calm down a little bit. And of course, I flick my Polaroids on, and I'm looking, I'm thinking, it's her.
Yeah.
Although there were two that were all like twins. The other one I caught twice. They called it, they named it after me. The Woods Common. They looked really similar, just had a really much bigger tail. And I'm looking and thinking, oh, please be that one. And of course, he's like, I've gone down with the netted it. And honestly, when you flip them from, I was looking at the left side, looking at the right flank, looking at the left flank, looking at the right flank, because Woods' Common had got one scale missing in the middle of its body. And every time I turned it over, I was just waiting for that middle scale to go, and it didn't. And I looked at Dave and I says, "That's a big girl, Dave." And it was good that it was a mate. Honestly, Matt, his reaction to it was exactly what I would expect anybody's reaction should be when they've caught a fish of that magnitude, a special one like that. So much bigger than his personal best. He was blown away. He was just like sitting on the grassy bank, just mumbling to himself, staring at the floor. Me and Roy, we're like the goalkeepers now, aren't we? To get everything ready, get the mat ready, get the sling, all this sort of thing. Dave's useless. He's no use and ornament to no one. Just sort of sat there looking at the floor. And I can't remember the exact weight, but it was big, really big. And but it was like she looked a bit tatty. First time you'd ever seen it like it, a few loose scales and all that, and that scale fell off it.
Yeah. So
I kept it in my tackle box, thinking one day I'll be able to put it back on. I always had it in my head that when I caught it, I could take this picture with the scale there and tell this story.
Yeah.
But it never happened. It never happened. I caught everything else in the lake pretty much, apart from that one. And unfortunately, I don't think she's there anymore. So, but that's my memento.
No, that's an awesome story, mate. Brilliant. So, do you still fish with that bloke now, or?
Dave runs a syndicate lake called the Bowl, which is the second closest lake to my house. I don't. It's right next to the M6 and the A, like the two busiest roads in the West Midlands, and I probably will fish it one day. I have fished it a little bit, but it doesn't float my boat. It's a great big bowl. It's like 65 acres or something. Great big lake, but it doesn't particularly float my boat. The fish are amazing. He's got some real scaly fish. He's got 40-pounder in there. Some serious fish, and there are a lot of fish in there now. There are a fair few hundred fish to catch. Tom Forrester, who works at Avid, he keeps saying, you've got to go and have a go because it's your kind of fishing, numbers, with a chance of a better one. But I don't feel like I could do it justice at the moment. My head's not into carp fishing enough to go and fish a great big lake like that on a regular basis, and because it's so close to home, I know what I'm like.
Yeah, you fall in the trap.
Yeah, I just end up on there a bit too often, and I've got two beautiful daughters who I love spending time with. My wife is my best mate. I'm lucky that my parents are still around. My brothers have got a good relationship with them. There's too much going on for me to go and get me head around something like that. But
I must admit, I see you always posting bits and pieces about the family. It's proper #family goals. And genuinely, you can tell how much you're a family guy and that, and now that you certainly put the priorities are right, mate.
Yeah, well,
It's very easy to get that wrong.
I said to a friend of mine the other day, he sent me a picture of his dog, and he's only young. I said to him, mate, just you wait until you've got kids that look and act just like the woman you fell in love with. You just get besotted with them, you know, it's so important. And I'm sure when they get older, I might have a different view of them when they're draining my bank account. But for now, you know, I like to think I go fishing enough to keep myself sane. But you need all those other things as well. No, I don't. I've got friends that are like it. You know, they say they go fishing to escape the family and work and all that kind of things. And I just can't get my head around that. I feel guilty when I go, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so fastidious about my fishing. Why if I'm going, I'm full on with it, because if I go and I don't catch anything, I feel, it's going to sound really stupid, I feel really guilty about spending so much time away and coming with for nothing.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, so I for that reason with my fishing, I do like a sure thing. I quite like going to venues or places that I know is going to be quite good. But I am willing to do a bit of pioneering, as it were, and spend some time. Like on the river is completely different.
Yeah.
You know, for my autumn, winter perch type fishing, I'm willing to follow up on the lamest, weakest rumour you've ever heard. I will just go to find out for myself. And, you know, for whatever reason, the past winter, as you know, was just bonkers.
Yeah.
And there was so much jeopardy involved, so much serendipity, you know, just speaking to the right bloke at the right time and being a nice person to someone would result in you being told about something that you might not have found out about, or, you know, you just speak to some old boy on the bank and he'd be like, oh yeah, when we fished a salmon pool up there, it's sort of another half a mile up the road, we fished a salmon pool up there in the spring, them stripy things are a bloody pain in the arse. You're like, really? Where's that then?
Yeah.
And just by being a nice guy, it led to so many fish, and I think ordinary river fishing's been a bit like that, regardless of the species. Been really lucky, although you make your own luck to some extent, and you know, having your ears open and being communicative with everybody and just speaking to people on the bank or off the bank or whatever. It's amazing. The more big perch I catch, the more I get told about by people who don't fish for them. Because he's the perch guy. Have you been to such and such a lake? No.
Yeah.
I heard this bloke caught one this big, you know, like, great big massive thing. No, did he? And then I'll just go. Just go. If it was carp, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. No way. No chance. I'm not wasting a session there. No, not doing it.
Yeah.
but for predator fishing, it's like, well, because it's so easy to prepare for, you don't need much, do you, to catch a perch? And my selection that I take with me is not very big anymore. It's easy to carry. I quite enjoy the walking, the mobility of it. I spend most of my life sat behind a laptop or on my phone. Yeah. I'm not, and so being able to connect with the outside world, I'm quite happy. I mean, the amount of fruitless journeys I've been on, and I'll still go back. I'll go back again because that rumour might be true. It was just you did the wrong thing, or I didn't quite hit it on the right water level or whatever. I'll go again.
Yeah.
Because even if it's just for the walk.
Yeah. It was interesting what Nick said as well about when he said, I just weren't good enough at lure fishing at that time. You know, that
I thought that was a really good attitude to take towards it. It's been quite interesting actually, because I I don't like going back and fishing the same places if I can help it. It's nice to have them to call upon, but I'm not going to invest too much time in fishing spots that I've already been and done very well at. There might be some that because of a big fish or something, I won't go there in certain conditions. A lot of it's gut feeling with that. But I've been a bit loose-lipped with people who I trust, who I can tell them about something. And, they're good anglers. I've watched them catch more fish than me on a canal, for instance. I've seen them with lots of perch. And they go to these places that were once, for me, like nailed on. If you came up this neck of the woods and we went perch fishing, I'd take you there. Because there's just so many fish there. And they'd have been like a dozen times for nothing.
Yeah.
And I think, well, why? I can't get my head around it. And then I'll go and be like, oh no, they're still here. And when Nick was saying what I was doing was just not good enough, or a lot of it's timing. It really is.
Yeah.
I know from speaking to London perch finder Adam Jones, him and Brett talk about fish becoming numb to lures, particular presentations. Somebody chucks out one of them at you enough times, eventually you're pushing water uphill, you're making life difficult for yourself. But equally, I do believe that if there are spots you know of, and you know they're there, you just know, that just keeping on hammering at them is the right thing to do. You just don't keep the same stuff on all the time. I see guys do it all the time. They turn up, they try the purple TRD, the favourite, when that doesn't work. They change it to a yellow one. When that doesn't work, they change it to a tickler or something, and it's just the same presentation.
Yeah.
I change when I'm perch fishing. I change really fast, probably to my detriment sometimes. But I'll be like, that should have worked by now, really quick. After a few, but then I also know the times to think, every other spot I've been to, that something with a paddle tail fish like that would work everywhere else. It's going to work here. It's just which speed. I'll move positions. I'll change the level of the fall, or I'll change the jig head weight, because I know I'm doing the right thing. It's just those little bits.
Yeah.
And again, I've fished with people who are so good at this. You learn all the real basic elements of that, of making those decisions. But ultimately, you can't teach it. You have to do it.
Yeah.
Those bank hours. And it's tricky, because unless you get that first bit right of knowing they're there, that's a perch spot, that's a perch spot, that's a perch spot. You could be doing what I'm talking about in swims with no fishing, and you can't learn.
Yeah.
So something I do this a lot. I've got a couple of Ed Matthews lakes are perfect for it. They're full of perch, millions, and they're a great place to go and just figure out a method or a technique, a retrieve. When you buy and you see a new bait and you think, oh, that looks like it will work. You can take it there and figure out how to get the best from it. So then you can go and apply that on the places where there are fewer fish but they're bigger, and really hammer them. You can really, but it's the same with every type of fishing. If you get good at catching double-figure carp, what do you think the difference is between a double-figure carp and a 40-pound carp?
Yeah. Not
a fat lot, other than how big they are. One's got a bigger mouth and a bigger belly, but they respond to the same stuff in the same way. Precious fish over time, that does change, but it's still carp. And, you can't skip through the levels, I've found. You've got to, with carp, if you want to get good at catching a 30-pounder, just catch lots of fish, and the 30-pounder will be there. If you start fishing lakes where there are lots of 30-pounders, you'll get really good at catching them. And then you join a lake that's got a lot of 40-pounders, and you might get really good at catching them as well. And with perch, it's exactly the same. You know, this winter I was exploring more to try and find a big shoal somewhere, just to catch. There's them sessions where you catch a couple of ones and a couple of twos, and you might get 1 3. It's like, what? Yeah, I've had like 15 fish, and I caught them on 4 different lures, doing 4 different things. I learned something. And then the next time you go back, because there's a big gang of fish there, because you know they're there, you might try all them 4 things that worked the last time and get nothing. You know, like, I'll try this. And you might try a new technique that you've never, like Carolina rig or something, like drop shot, and you might try something you've not really got to grips with. And because you're fishing something that's a bit more prolific, you'll really get your head around it. Yeah. And then, because you've caught lots of fish, when you go to them places where you've got a feeling that there's a good fish there or whatever, you're just knowing what to do at the right time, because all those bank hours, all that instinct, you've built it into you. It's just part of how you fish now. And it's really hard to, you know, I try and make a big effort to educate. That's probably not the right word. I don't want to sound like you're lecturing. But to share what you've learned. Yeah. You know, I'll make little videos or take little pictures of stuff that I'm doing, and you know, I do a lot in the Instagram stories just to ask me questions and I'll tell you what I think. Mm-hmm. And you get messages off loads of guys like, oh mate, I did that you said, and I caught this, and it's like I get more of a buzz from that than catching it myself. Yeah, that's great. I think it doesn't matter what you're fishing for. If the more fish you catch, the better you'll be. That's the simple, really, I suppose. Yeah, I say it links back to sort of what you were saying about Di, and when he was his tench fishing. Yeah, you know, he had it built into him, and I suppose when you're going out doing thousands of casts, walking 10s, 20 miles, you know, eventually when you do get it right, you start putting them puzzle pieces together. But I definitely will have to come and join you, hopefully. If things stay how they are, then we'll be allowed to travel, because I think that really got in the way. Definitely, because I shall do, this autumn I will do exactly what I did the autumn just past. In September, October sort of time, I just went, because it's warmer. Perch are a lot easier to catch at that time of year than any other time of year. They're just starting to visit those slacker areas on the river. The weeds died back, water clarity's better. It's a great time to go and fish places that on the map look good, or that rumour that someone told you is worth going and just finding out. And you know, that a lot of the fish that I found in September was where I ended up spending most of the winter. But I caught from so many different stretches, I didn't know where to go. Yeah. A lot of that is then just gut instinct. For all I know, those places I caught from early on that I didn't go back to again could have been even better. Yeah. And so I've got lots of places to go and revisit. Yeah. I've got places that I think I should revisit because they must be there. They weren't there when I was there, but they've got to be there. You know? Yeah. And the river changes every year. There's a couple of spots that were ace 3 or 4 years ago, and literally you catch part there now and that's it. The perch is just gone. They're somewhere else now. But it's a good piece of advice for anybody who wants to get into perch fishing on the rivers, canals, anything. Go and find them early. They don't move far. You find them September, October time, and they'll be yours to catch till the river shuts. They don't go very far. So, are you a perch angler or a carp angler then? Do you know, that of all the questions you sort of said we might talk about, this is the one that really stumped me. I was talking to my wife earlier about it. She said, well, what are you going to say? What kind of angler are you? I said, well, I'm a really jammy angler. Really lucky. Like, I've been very, very fortunate. But one thing I would say is, I hope I'm neither. I'll take the question as a bit of validation, really, that I'm not I don't want to be in the box. I don't want to be pigeonholed as anything, because I might decide that I just want to go fishing for tuna for the rest of my life, but I still wouldn't call myself a tuna angler. Do you know what I mean? I'd still like going fishing. I've done a lot of this recently. Just going to a commercial fishery, sitting on a Korum chair and watching the tip fly around 50 times with God knows what on the end. If I had more time to fish, I would do that more than going carp fishing or barbel fishing or perch fishing. 100%. If I had more time, I would fish just for literally, whatever comes along, just fishing places with loads and loads of fishing. Because I enjoy the process of tweaking and trying. I just change the hook, I change the hook bait. The match fishing appeals to me, apart from the competitive thing.
Yeah.
I do like competition. I'm quite competitive, but I'm only really competitive with myself, with my fishing. I don't ever compare what I do with anybody else. It's not. Everybody's life's different context, different venues, different postcode. It's not. You can't compare your results with anybody else's. Even if you're fishing the same place, you just can't. Yeah. What kind of angler am I? Obsessed one. I quite like that over the years there are a lot of species that I haven't really given that much time and attention to, and I think as time wears on I will, purely because of my sort of peer group.
Yeah.
And there are loads of fish that you don't really understand the appeal of them until you see one.
Mm-hmm.
Like big bream, just didn't get it until I accidentally, whilst carp fishing, caught a 16-pounder. I just looked at it and I was like, what? Wow! It's the proper. When they get to over double figures, they're an amazing fish to look at. And same thing with the perch, really. Now I know Rob Hall, who come with us, until he actually had a 3.5-pound perch in his hands, he just didn't get it.
No.
But once he got one and seen the difference between a 2 and 1 that big, he was like, "Oh, when? Let's go again. When are we going again? When are we going? Can you get me a ticket? Come on, let's go again." And I think the Crucians is a good example. Until I saw one over £2, I just thought, well, why would you want to fish for a fish that's got like no mouth and really hard to catch, and there's hardly any of them? They're like, it's like a hen's tooth that you're fishing for. But then when you see one, and you understand that they don't grow on trees. There's very few venues with them in, and very few venues with big ones in.
And true ones.
Yeah, and the process, the journey of how you get there to catch one that big, I get that. I completely get that.
I think if perch, you're saying about Rob and the perch now, I think if perch got to like 20, 30 pound, no one would fish for anything else. Imagine if they got that big. Imagine the lure fishing. Imagine,
My favourite freshwater fish is the rough.
Yeah.
Because they're like a perch but better. Because they're sort of spotty, and the perch are pretty. Each one's pretty unique. If you see them in the flesh, but I'm sure if you kind of looked at my Instagram feed, you'd be like, "Is this the same one?" Because they all sort of blur into each other.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if rough got to £3 and £4 and £5 and £8, like perch do in Holland, I think they'd just absolutely blow you away. Yeah. Like those big wrasse, they're like a work of art, aren't they?
Yeah.
So, a £20 perch, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'd settle for a 3 though. 3 is enough.
I sent you a picture of that rough I caught in the winter, and you I was like, mate, you're catching all these nice like perch and that all the time. There's like you got albums and waiting to go onto Instagram that I've already seen, and I'll send you a picture of the rough, and you're like, mate, I'm jealous. That's a huge rough. Like
for real.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I haven't caught a rough. I almost feel guilty catching one. They're like, I hold them in such a high regard.
Yeah.
It's really sad, that, isn't it? But yeah, the rough are the best. A £5 rough would just be amazing, like a work of art.
That would be. So you said about the you got a spot for match fishing, but maybe not the competitive side. Does that bring you back to how you started fishing then?
To some extent, yeah. I mean, I've got two younger brothers, and we all used to go fishing together on the canal in Nosal in Staffordshire with my dad and my granddad. And it was, a bamboo cane with a ready tie pole rig on the end, catching whatever, little perch, little gudgeon, little roach and stuff. Every now and again you might hook a bream and it'd be like a pound, it'd be massive, it's like the biggest fish ever. And then for a long time I just didn't really latch into it. My dad fished matches. He used to fish, him and my granddad, they used to fish all the river matches, like sort of barbel, chub type matches on the river. They used to get in a coach and go together. But I never really got the bug for that. And then I can remember, my middle brother Mike got into fishing a lot more than me. And he used to go to this lake over at Telford Way and catch these bream that were like proper, like you used to read about in the Fisherman's Handbook. They were proper bronze bream.
Yeah.
Like 4, 5, 6 pounders. And that's massive, isn't it? Like, bream is like a big fish to look at because they're not very wide. They're like a big disc. I can remember my brother catching one, and for the first time, I was like, I need to start coming fishing. That looks a bit more like it. Yeah. And started buying little odds and sods and fishing. And I quite like the sort of feeder fishing, the in and out. Try that, that's not working. Try that, that's not working. And we went to fish this place in Dorley in Telford, and my dad was like, "We're going to catch some carp." We'd been on holiday, and when you're in the airport, it's like, you young kid, and it was something to do on the plane. I bought an angler's mail. Yeah. And in the angler's mail, there was literally like every famous carp had been caught that week. Like, what was it? Hardtail Gertie was in there. Shoulders was and is the best carp ever. Yeah. Probably for this one issue where I saw it, There was 2-tone was in there, but when it weren't as big. Mm-hmm. There was a great big grass carp from Horton in there, and a few other notes. If I reeled the names off, you'd know which fish it was on about. Yeah. And there was this article in there with Andy Little making this paste, this Richworth base mix and all that, and that was it. That I'm doing that. We're going fishing, and that's what we're going to do. And of course, I've got like a 10-foot feeder rod and another odd float rod or something. We went to this lake, and we're not equipped for it at all. Our unhooking mat was like a tablecloth. We just folded it up. Yeah. This white tablecloth. And I'm fishing, and the tip's just, a carp bites like on a feeder. Just gone. I'm playing this fish, and I'm that giddy and lost in the moment. I'm like backwinding and just letting it go and go and go, and it's a massive bird's nest. Yeah. Oh no, I can't. My dad, somehow, he's an engineer, so he just figures stuff like that out really quickly. He just sorted it out and put it back in my hand, turned the backwind off and said, "Don't touch the reel, just reel it in." We landed this carp. It was probably about, I'm going to say £8. It might not have been anything like that. I've got a picture of it somewhere. Yeah. I think about £8, this real dark common. But that was it then. But I needed to catch more of these. And I caught another one afterwards that weren't quite so big. And after that, it was like carp, mad on carp. Yeah. My dad, because I got back into fishing, he got back into fishing, and he didn't really like sitting on a lake and waiting for the carp. He's a river angler. So we used to go to the river loads. And he would always catch loads more than me, which didn't. For barbel, it's still the same now, I haven't quite pieced it together in the head. Yeah. If you're on a good barbel stretch, you catch barbel on anything. but that's never really. If I'm with somebody who's good at it, they'll always just batter me. You know, they always catch more than me. My dad always caught more than me. And then, obviously, as I got older, you start earning a bit of money. You buy your own stuff, and then I can remember I bought one of those sets, the Badger, an alarm, a pod, 2 rods, 2 reels for like $99.99. The rods lasted like 2 hours in the garden and they were dead. Over the years, you just start building up your tackle, and I used to have a lot of sessions just going fishing, but what I wanted to do was go carp fishing.
Yeah.
And then, as soon as I got into sort of my mid-teens, when you could go on your own,
yeah,
my mum used to drop me off at this lake at the bottom of the Wrekin Reservoir, just leave me there, and I'd just spend the whole day stalking, mainly, floater fishing, stalking. And quite often I'd catch absolutely nothing. Nothing, but I just loved it. I still love it. Like, up there, that's like my thinking place.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm quite lucky that I've not had to go there for a long time, but if I ever got anything a bit mad going on in my life, I'll just go and sit in that one swim and look across the lake at the Wrekin and just take it all in,
Yeah.
But, I can count the missed opportunities. There's so many carp I should have caught that I didn't.
Yeah.
You can't go back, can you?
I actually, you're lucky that you caught the first carp you hooked, I think. But I lost the first carp I ever hooked. I was good mates with the famous dart player Bobby George's son. So Bobby George's mansion was about 10 minutes from my house. I used to play football with his son, and he had lakes in his garden, like match fishing lakes with mixture of sort of everything in it. And his son Richard used to fish, and we used to go fishing there. If I was fishing with Richard, then I'd fish for free, but if not, then Bobby would still charge me. And but I remember just literally Bobby George would come down. He's almost sort of taught me how to sort of fish as well. I think because he didn't want me to use noddy tactics on his prize fish as well. And he'd be like, look, I was like, I want to fish on the island. And he's like, you don't need to fish on the island. I was like, I want to fish on the island. Like everyone else is fishing on the island. I'm only like 10 or something maybe. And he's like, this is an island to the fish as well. This little margin down here. Just fish down here. Look, put it here. And just keep feeding maggots and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, eventually I was fishing with Richard and the float shot under. Different sort of shot under than what I was used to with the rudd and the tench and things, and bang, I was like, oh my god, what is this? And obviously the clutch weren't set, and Richard was going, pull the rod up high, like hold your rod up high, and my rod's down like almost in line with the fish, completely wrong, and bang, it's gone. And it snapped, like I think it snapped above the float as well. So you get the stereotypical match carp that snaps someone up, and you see the float coming into your swim, you think, oh, there's a carp in the swim. Like it was one of them. I think we ended up catching it later on, but losing it was enough for me to be like, wow, that was some power that I've never felt before, because I'd fished for ages and have avoided carp somehow. I don't know how I'd done it, but I just loved catching the roach, the bream, the perch, everything, but I'd always avoided the carp. And until I had that moment when I felt that sheer power of that fish, and I thought I had no control over. It was probably about £3, and but I was on my Argos setup on my seat box, sitting there with probably gear all round and probably a push bite behind me. And yeah, I won't ever forget that. I won't ever forget my first fish, which was a perch, and I won't ever forget that fish either, because that was the first time I hooked a proper fish.
Yeah, my first fish was a perch.
Yeah, I had an interest in fishing, but never got round to doing it because I didn't know anyone. And then one of my good mates, dad's come home with some old fishing rods, which was my friend's granddad's, and they were proper old rods, and it had a box of tackle, and the dad didn't really know what he was doing. We certainly didn't, but he knew enough to rig up a float rod, and he went to the tackle shop. We didn't have a net or nothing. He went to the tackle shop and bought some maggots, and we took it in turns to cast out. He actually taught us to cast. It was actually a proper fixable reel, and we were just catching these fish. And I remember between us going, right, when it's my goal, I'm putting 6 maggots on, because I'm going to put 6 maggots on because that's going to catch a bigger one, you know. And all it would do is deep hook the perch, and you know you'd have to pull on. But yeah, we were just poaching some little lake, which I later found out to hold some clonking carp. I later perch. It's typical when I poached it when I didn't have a clue. I never got caught. As soon as I went over there with the carp gear, it was like, get off straight away. You're not. There's like 10 members in here, and you have to be a local farmer. But yeah, I just always loved it. It's something that I've dropped so many hobbies over the years, but definitely not fishing. It never will. It's just
this in my family. You know, everybody's like a golfer. Everyone's a real mad keen golfer. You know, I was a mad keen golfer. One of my first jobs was like in a 6 weeks holiday. I used to work as a greenkeeper. That is one of the best jobs in the world because you're just outside the whole time, you know.
Yeah.
And I've had the odd flirtation back with golf as just a release valve. It's not fishing, is it? But I'm the same with that. You know, if I'm going to go, I want to play well, so I'll go to the range like 3 times a week. Be on the putting green for hours. So same with me, sort of me proper fishing.
Yeah.
If I'm going to go, I want to make it count. I want it to be good. You know, this sort of fishing for pleasure. Well, I get pleasure from it being good.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I used to work at a driving range when I was younger. I did work experience there at school. They made us go somewhere, and I just wanted to be somewhere local, and there's a driving range around the corner. So I got that, and like when I first turned up, they had the proper buggy. I used to just like ragging that around, and everyone tinging balls at me constantly, like bang, that was close. And then that little buggy broke, and I was like, oh, that's a shame. And I got a little Saturday job there and that, and then they were like, oh, we got a new buggy today. I was like, oh, what is it? An automatic Astra. And I was about like, it was just an Astra that they'd put like metal like shields in the window. And it was like, be careful with the flags when you're going around, and reversed it straight out at like silly speeds, like bowled over at the first flag. And then I used to rag that around, just picking up all the balls, and absolutely loved it, you know. And then I don't know how, but I ended up working on a tomato picking farm like a slave. My dad said like I was 12 years old. Legal age to work then was 13, but he was like, look, we'll get you a job at the tomato farm. Just go down there and say you're 13. I was alright, so I went down there. I was like, I'm 13 years old, and like I look young now, you know. I looked even younger then. It's like proper slave labour, and so I worked there after school. I used to walk there from school, walk there, do a couple of hours, and my old man would pick me up from his work, and then we'd go home, have some dinner and that, and then I'd bike up there on a Saturday and do like a full like summer's day in a greenhouse. It was horrible. I wanted a paper round, but there was only one in the village, and my mate had that. So so I did that for like bugger all, and they'd pay us like weekly in cash, and it was about 20 to 25 quid, and used to get paid on like the Monday, but I knew that they did the wages on a Saturday, so I'd bike up there and knock on their front door like, hello, I just come to pick my wages, but oh, bloody hell, Matt's here. Because I knew on the Sunday there was a boot sale around the corner, and I'd go there and try and get fishing gear as cheap as I can, and I'd go up to people's stalls and be like, that's a really nice Sundridge reel. How much is that? And he's like, that's £8, mate. And I thought, I'm only getting like £25 a week, like £8. I was like, would you take like £3 for it or anything? And he's like, no, £8. That's all right. Well, if you're still here at the end of the day, can I take it for like £3? He's like, yeah, if it's still here. And I'd sit there and I'd just wait for like the whole day, and like, oh, they're starting to pack up, it's still there. And people would go over and pick up the reel and be like, oh, that's nice. And I'd be like, please don't buy it. And like, yeah, if it was still there, I'd go up the end with me £3. Like, is it all right to take that reel now? And they'd be like, yeah, fair play, mate. But it's what you had to do to get the gear, you know. My dad didn't really understand. He wanted to help out. He had 4 kids, though, you know, and we didn't have loads of money. And he didn't really understand, because he weren't an angler, how much fishing costs, because it's not cheap, you know. He used to sort me out with the bait and everything, and that was enough for me. Yeah. Like, a lot of times I'd go fishing and I'd only have 2 floats in my box, and if I lost them 2 floats, I had no more floats left, and I went there float fishing, and I was getting picked up at a time. So I'd go and just beg, borrow and steal off of other old boys around the lake. You're right. I'd be like, how you getting on? And they'd be like, it's a stereotypical one. How you getting on? Oh, yeah, I've had a few. What about you? Yeah, I've had a few, but I ain't got no floats left now. And if someone said that to me, I'd be like, mate, come here, like, bring your rod round here, let me set you up, And I think that's what they did for me, really. But yeah, put on the charm, and you know, there weren't many anglers my age, really. I used to do the matches, the junior matches. It's just me and my pal. Like that was it. We just fishing against each other. So, but yeah, no, it's great, and it's great to see like younger people now. I don't know if you've seen it sort of on the venues you go to or on the rivers and that, but there's definitely a lot more younger anglers out there, and some really. I walked around a day ticket carp fishery the other week. Didn't end up fishing there, but out of all the anglers around there, most of them were like my age or a bit older or a bit younger, hanging because they've got beard up in their bivvy all night. And then a young lad come down and he was like polite, hello mate, how you doing? You've been fishing, like, and you could tell straight away he knew exactly what he was doing. He was probably the best angler on there. There's 30 anglers on there. This young kid got himself in a little corner, and then he ended up finding me, or I found him on Instagram, and he had a 30 that night. And I thought that kid, I said to my mate, because we ended up going to another lake, I said to him, he's a good angler, and he said, yeah, I think he's probably the best one there. And sure enough, he went and banged out a massive one.
Yeah. I've met a lot over the years. These younger guys, they've just got it, whatever it is, they just have it. And there are lots of different versions of that. You've got the ones who are real hungry to learn, ask loads of questions, and they pick it up like that. You've got the ones who are like annoyingly in tune. They don't know why they're doing what they're doing. It just works, and they can't even explain it to you. It's just like an innate sense of knowing what to do. And then you get those anglers that are both, and that's when you end up with an Ellis Brazier or a Harry Pardo. These guys are they're like Jedis.
Yeah.
You watch them turn their hand to a species or a river or a venue they've never been to. It's just like, how did you know to do that? And they can't tell you. You just do it.
No. Yeah. And if you can surround yourself by people like that, then you're going to pick up bits and pieces on the way.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely like that. I'm such a sponge. And if I'll learn off somebody really quickly and then go away and make it my own, sort of learn things like that. In everything, whether it's fishing or work or whatever, you've always got to have mentors, people who you look up to and you can bounce off and learn from. And, if you're lucky enough to be able to go fishing with somebody who's just way better than everyone, like you, then you're just going to get better. That's just, regardless. Yeah. And you should never, ever, 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 ever be afraid to ask a stupid question. There aren't any.
Yeah. So, a couple more sort of subjects to discuss with you, and just ones that probably we'll discuss with everyone who comes on, because we discussed it with Nick and it was a bit of a laugh. So the first one is any fishing bloopers. I've got so many that I've probably got enough for a number of guests, so I'll share one, and hopefully you'll be able to think of something. But while you're thinking, I'll tell you another one of mine out of the archives. So I was fishing Ardley Reservoir. So it's about 115 acre lake in Colchester in Essex, and there's about 100 carp in there at the time. I was lucky, and I grew up in Ardley, so I walked around that an awful lot. I never had the bottle to fish it because it was just huge. Some very well-known anglers come away from there thinking it's not worth it for the small stock or whatever. And I'd seen them spawning, and there's huge fish in there. And I thought one day I'd have a go. Anyway, I felt it was the right time. It was a fairly cheap night ticket. Went down there. Walked around it for about 2 weeks while I waited for I think I was waiting to get paid so I could afford the ticket. And they were just all migrating down one arm, which made it easier because this arm was like a few acres, and I could forget about the 100 and saying the other way, just concentrating this bit in front of me. And they stayed there, put a bit of bait in, and I had 3 on my first night out of like 100 fish. And the bailiff came around in the morning, how'd you get on, mate? I said I had 3 last night. He went, what, bream? I went, no, carp. He was like, no, you didn't have 3 carp. I was like, yeah, look, here's the photos, mate. And he was like, mate, people fish here all year and they don't have 3 fish. And I was like, well, it's just, like you said, I was lucky, mate, that's all it is. But anyway, I was fishing down there, you don't really ever see anyone else down there because people, like a lot of lakes, they go there with the best interest. They put their all in for about a month and then they think it's not worth it. And so I rarely saw anyone else down there. And at the time, I'd got into the stage, I was doing a night, I'd got into the stage of sleeping on my front. So at the moment, I sort of sleep in the fetal sort of position and the same every night. And usually, like, the other opposite way to my missus, so I don't get a load of death breath in my face. She don't watch none of this, so we can get away with it. And I had a really awful bed chair that I got from... My mum bought me it when I left school, because basically I couldn't be asked when I was at school. I got all right grades, but I just couldn't be asked. I wanted to do other things, and she knew that I could do better, and she said, look, they're doing these after school, like, English classes. If you go to them all, then I'll buy you the bed chair, because I was sleeping on the deck. You know, I was like, I really want a bed chair, so yeah, I'm going to do it. And I did well in English, so like I thank her for that. But anyway, eventually it had this day, all the elastic had gone on it, and I was sleeping on my front on it because that's just how I was sleeping at the time. And I get a take in the night. I think I'd had that 3 fish hit, and it was the week after. I get a take in the night, and it's so hot. It was in like it was just before they spawned, and I was sleeping on top of the bag. And I get up, and the rod's just pissing off, and there's all weed around there, and there's a big snag that I was fishing next to, and I get up to the rod, and because I've slept on my front, both my arms were dead. You know when one arm's dead and you pick it up and it's like the heaviest thing in the world? Both my arms were dead, so I'm swinging them and they're just dead. And the rod's coming round, it's pissing off line, and I'm like trying to get, I don't know how to get any blood into these arms, and I've gradually started to feel one and sort of got it on the rod, and then I was like picking the other hand up and putting it on the rod.
What must that have looked like?
I know.
Someone had seen it.
Oh, mate, it would have been the funniest viral clip ever if there was any video footage of it. Man with 2 dead arms tried to strike a rod, and eventually the adrenaline started kicking in that I need to get this fish, and it could be this, massive unknown creature, and managed to sort of get the blood to the hands and pick it up. But yeah, from the outside, if anyone was looking, then it would have been the most hilarious thing. It was hilarious for me afterwards. I landed the fish and just sat there, just laughing. I had no shoes on, I don't think. I was all silted up to my knees, and I was just thinking, I can't keep sleeping on my front because this is an issue. But yeah, that was brilliant.
I've got a good one. Like, luckily for me, nobody saw this happen, but a few people saw the aftermath, and they must have thought, what have you been doing? It was on Rob Hughes' Perch Syndicate Lake, which is not a very big lake at all. But he does have a little boat on there. And you don't need to use the boat for any other reason than to go and get fish. Because there were loads of these little islands. And, I'd never, ever needed the boat. Never saw any. Used to use the boat to smash the ice if you wanted to fish or to go and bait up on the island. But usually you'd give your bait to Shoes, and Shoes would do it for you because he didn't really want you going out in the boat. Yeah. Well, I was fishing this point swim, and the boat was in the swim from where John or Rob had left it there, and I'm just fishing. And I saw this fish show, and it was one of them casts where it was like, if I thread the eye of a needle through there, I can get bait there. I ain't got to move. Because I didn't really want to move where my rods were, but I thought, I can't ignore that. So, chucked it across. Literally, like, kissed the bush that the fish were. And it was a good take spot anyway, but I never thought about fishing it from there. You'd normally go in the peg a bit further away. So put the rod there, put it on the rest. And of course, 20 minutes later, you just see that. Oh. Yeah. No beeps, nothing, the rod's just complete. It's like a full test curve in the rests. Picked it up and I'm thinking, please don't go right. If it goes right, it goes around the back of this island. Yeah. Guess what happens? It can't straight line. And I can feel my line grating on the clay. There was nothing really for it to get caught in. It was just grating on the clay. And of course, the harder you pull, the more your line goes into the bank. Yeah. And eventually I can feel it kicking on the end, but I can't make any ground on it. So I thought, I'll go out in the boat. It's just one of them little big sport yak things.
Yeah, I know the ones.
Now,
Yeah.
bear in mind, at this point in my life, I had never played a fish from a boat before.
Yeah.
Nobody had ever told me what you're supposed to do. No idea. And it is freezing. So I'm like the Michelin man. You know, 1,000,000 layers on, big wind jacket, all that. Jump in the boat. And the life jacket was like sort of like half on, and I couldn't get it over all my clothes. So I'm like, I faffed about. Fish ain't going anywhere, so I'm in a rush, but not really in a rush. Of course, I go out in the boat, and you know, anybody who's ever been out in a boat to land a fish before will know what happens. You just spin around in circles, and I was just because the boat was only little, so like a 1.8 metre thing. I was just spinning, and eventually I figured out, okay, you've got to like sort of if you're going to wind to the fish, you've got to sort of zigzag to get to it.
Yeah.
So of course I think, right, what I need to go past the island and then put pressure on the fish. So of course I did. But like I just couldn't get my head around, you know, rowing and playing the fish at the same time. I just didn't know what to do. And I kept spinning around in circles. Every time I tried to net it, the boat would just drift further and further away on the wind. I must have been playing this poor fish out in the lake for a good 20 minutes. Making no progress whatsoever. And in the end I thought, I can't land this. Every time I try and land it, the wind just blows me away from the fish. Of course, like now I know exactly what to do, but in the heat of the moment, I had no idea what to do. So I thought, I'll just get out. Now I'm over on the other bank, I'll just get out the boat.
Yeah.
So of course, the wind's drifting the boat into the reeds. Beautiful. Well, of course, the fish is not. Fish is still going the opposite direction. So I'm stood up in the boat in the area, like it's just like one of them, looking at this fish and thinking, well, this would have worked if I'd have sort of loosened the clutch or opened the bail arm or something, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I thought, I'll make that. And I'm sure if I'd got a pair of shorts on and a t-shirt, I'd have made it really easy, but like I say, I was the Michelin man with big moon boots on. And I've jumped, and of course I've just gone straight in the water, completely up to my waist, stuck in the sill.
Oh, no.
And it's freeze. It's really. I think by the time I finished, I had an innie.
Yeah.
It weren't even a press stud. It was so cold, and of course, because I've got all this stuff on, it weighs an absolute ton. I can't move.
Yeah.
But I did manage to land the fish. I nearly lost the fish at the net because the boat kept drifting at me.
Yeah.
Because I shoved it out of the way. I landed this fish, and of course I managed to unplug myself from the water, climb up on the bank. I walk round to go and get the unhooking mat and sort of come back round with the camera gear and everything. And this lad Ollie's come, and he's just looked at me like, what are you doing? And I really didn't find it funny until Ollie was one of those. He's a proper Shropshire lad, you know. He sounds like he's from out the hills. Yeah. Just the way he looked at me, it was like, "What are you doing?" I was in hysterics then because I thought what I've just done was so stupid. And now, I mean, luckily, I lived about 15 minutes away from the lake, so I was able to go home and get changed. But otherwise, I'd have been there for like another 2 nights, trying to dry out all this stuff.
Yeah. Dangerous too when you think back.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't such a shallow lake, I would have just waited for the fish to come out, I guess, or something like that.
Yeah.
Especially with there not being anybody there. But that was definitely not one of my finer moments on the bank. Bit of a calamity, that one. Bit of a calamity.
Good story though, mate. Well, I got not really a blooper, but I had a strange thing occur at Dorford the other week. Obviously, I went down there and fished. Firstly, what a beautiful venue!
Yeah, amazing.
I have to go back there.
Yeah, Ed Matthews has done an amazing job for that.
Oh, it's just fantastic. In the daytime, I see pretty much the stock of the lake, like you said to me. You said the first thing you see is a massive ghostie, and it's pretty much one of the first things I saw. I was on the island swim for the first day because there was 2 other lads on, and in the day between us we were just trying to catch one in the day, but it was like bread was poison to them. Do you know, I tried everything. I tried making it slowly sink in front of their face. I tried. The only thing I couldn't get hold of and didn't take was worms. I was digging around trying to find worms, and it must be like an anti-worm area because there was no worms at all. And it was funny because
Dorford's full of perch about that big, and that's what if a worm, as soon as it touches the water, it gets eaten by one of them.
Oh, that makes me feel a bit better.
Yeah.
But so I moved into the car park swim because I saw fish showing there the first night. The fish in the daytime were just in one area, around the back of the island, just having a laugh, you know, just swimming around, not interested, not even worried that I'm there. Yeah. You know, not even worried if I'm casting at them, you know. Like you said, you cast at them and they circle back around and have a look what it was. It's ridiculous, but they don't want to eat it. It's just like, oh, what's that? And we sort of figured out that they'd go down the back of the island and then, mate, you'd have a couple of takes, and then eventually they'd come out into what I'd call the bowl area, and the car park swim was the perfect place to sort of pick them up. So the second night I did on there, and I lost one in the night, and I lost one for the most strange way. I got done by a rat. So what happened is this. As you, I think I told you, you know, I was getting a lot of there was a trailer in there at the time, so I was getting a lot of nuisance beeps and things, and I was sitting watching the rods, and it got dark. I'd much rather sit there and just watch like the silhouette of what bits going on. And that night there wasn't a hatch, but they're just showing like mad. You know, not a hatch that I could see anyway, and I was just enjoying seeing them. Even if I couldn't see them, you'd see the ripples eventually. Yeah. You work out where they were, and I was watching this rat in the swim, and it kept running across, and it weren't bothering me. It was fine. I was just letting it do its thing, and it ran along the front of the swim, and you know, I was fishing fairly slack, but not slack enough that, you know, sometimes I'd run through all your bobbins and it'd do all 3 rods, and it just jumped up onto the wooden ledge, and it was going across my rods, and it ran across, and I could only just see it, and it got to the 3rd rod, and it went, and I was like, you little bugger, like, you finally ran into I knew you'd do it at some point, you know, and he scuttled right off, and I thought, that's the last I'll probably see of him tonight. And I was fishing on that 3rd rod, I was fishing locked up because there was like a snag that came into it was almost like roots that grew out like a load of fingers, and I was fishing quite close to that, and I was fishing locked up, and it went and I thought, all right, well, he's gone, and then it went did it, and I was like, I better give that a look. So I got the head torch because it was dark, shined it on, and the rod tip was bent right round, and I was like, no, it literally taken as that rat had run past. And I didn't have like illuminated hangers or anything like that. Like, I was like, oh shit! So I just quickly and by the time I got there, I walked down the bank, and it had already done me in a root. And I thought, that rat done me. If I wasn't watching that rat, if I weren't sitting there watching the water, if I was sitting there watching, I don't know, Rick and Morty on Netflix, I probably would have jumped out and hit that. But because I was actually looking at my rods and what was going on, the rat done me.
Dorford is a bit strange. When me and Rob were there, I had something similar where the animals tricked me. In the night, there was some fish in this weed bed, and the same sort of thing. I'm fishing locked up and expecting if I get one, I'm gonna have to reel in a weed bed. Yeah, this was before it opened. You know, there's hardly any weed in there now, is there? But at the time, it was really bad. And there was these little sort of. They weren't tufted ducks. I don't know what they were.
Are they them baby grebes?
Yeah,
are they
like a little dab chick thing.
Yeah, I
think they're actually called on the spot and giving me all these beeps. And I can only think that one of those little chicks got caught in the line. And I kind of knew. Because sitting him out there, I was watching it happen. And then it sort of looked like a full-blown take. So I got up off my bed chair. And as I got to the rods, there were 4 carp, literally under my rod tips, on some bait we'd put in when we were stalking and that in the daytime. And in the head torch, I just seen them all. And of course, they saw me.
Yeah.
Big bald dude comes storming out across all the bark, and they went like in all different directions. 2 of them went straight into the weed bed when the line was like in the weed bed. So this carried on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, have I got one of them? Where am I? You know what I mean? Like, where am I fishing? What am I doing?
Yeah.
And I think, well, it was just this weird sequence of events that had happened. Them 4 fish, they were just mugging me off in the side. I hadn't got bait there. But you'd have thought, the way the rod went off, you'd have thought that I'd hooked one of these ones that I'd spooked off. It was so weird. Such a weird place.
Them little birds you were saying, I didn't know what they were, and I ended up like chatting to a mate. I was like, mate, there's these weird birds. They make a funny noise as well. They're like woody woodpecker. Like, I said, what do they look? He said, what do they look like? I said, they look like a grebe that's been shrunk. He was like, mate, there is a species of bird called a little grebe. And I went, all right. He goes, Google it. I Googled it, and that's exactly what it looked like. So I think they're actually called little grebe.
I just call them a dad. It's a bit like, you know, like different types of weed that are in a lake.
Yeah.
People just call it, it's onion weed. Well, is it?
Yeah.
No one really knows, do we? It just becomes what people call it.
Yeah. Yeah. Or cabbages.
Cabbages.
Or, you know, yeah. What's it actually called?
At Baden, there's this stuff, and it is just like kelp.
Yeah.
I don't actually know what it is or what it's supposed to be, but it's the only lake I've ever fished where they've got it's fields of it in the summer.
Yeah.
I don't even know what it is. Kelp.
So one of the other questions that I wanted to ask, obviously I see on your Instagram you're a bit of a foodie, I would say. You like your nice food and your nice drinks and beers and ales.
Well,
and
I was just going to say, Matt, I reckon I've had that. I've been sat looking at that for ages.
Yeah. What's it like on the Bankside? I could never see you eating a pot noodle, mate.
Well, you'd be surprised, Matt, because, like I said before, when I go fishing, that's what I'm there to do. And I have this little sort of routine that I follow when I go to Baden, for instance. Because they run this thing 12 till 12. I can't get round it. You know, they look after me up there. I'm a sort of friend of the family, as it were. I've been going there for so long, get on really well with the people who own and run the place. But they don't like rope swims off for me or let me down any earlier than anybody else. It's a fair playing field. And so I always, there's a little bit of superstition to this, but there's some sort of truth to it as well. There's this little shop in Penkridge I'll stop in to buy just something to drink. And so, you know, I've got my tea, my coffee, all that sort of thing, but it's just some other stuff to drink. And I always buy one of them big sugar-free Monster energy drinks.
Yeah.
Honestly, because I don't drink them all the time. When I drink one of them, have you ever seen the film Lucy?
Yeah.
Honestly, every single fibre of my tiny little brain starts working.
Yeah.
When I have one of those drinks and I go and have a walk around the lake. So I'll save this drink until I'm driving down to whichever lake I'm going to. And I'll pretty much drink it before I get there. And it's sort of like necking it almost. Honestly, I completely zone. It's like ethereal.
Yeah.
Honestly, nothing else in the world matters. I don't think about anything else going on other than finding carp and watching them and trying to figure out what's going on. So quite often, for the first day, for the first sort of 12 hours of the trip, I've got to take food with me that doesn't need preparation. Pot noodles too much. I've got to warm water up for that.
Yeah.
So I'll take it could be anything. It's usually something really random, not a real meal, just something to tie me over, like a grenade bar or something. Not really that fussed. It's just to stop me falling over. You know, I'm quite a big bloke. I can't get round or eating nothing.
Yeah.
But then, once I'm actually fishing, I'm in this swim and I get all sorted and everything. I don't tend to put my bivvy or anything like that up until it's nearly dark. Everything else will be out. I'll get my bed out so I've got something to sit on. I'll sort of set my life up as I want it, but I don't put my bivvy up until it gets dark. Just in case I change my mind. It's just easier to move. And I've always been like that. Even if it's chucking it down, I'd rather just fish out the back of the car or, you know, fish off the barrow and not use it all. And then once I do a lot of what Ellis would call bait and leave.
Yeah.
I always think when you're on these day ticket lakes, you can't pre-bait really, but you can within the time you're there. For the most part, those fish at on those lakes down there, they associate bait with being fished for, because 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 50 weeks in the year, that's what happens. Mm-hmm. So even if you can bait a swim and leave it with no lines in it for 6 hours, it's enough time for them to come in and have a look. And on venues where there are a few fish, they'll have a little scoff. You can see. I'll stand on the far margin or something. The water's crystal clear there. I just watch them, thinking, if I had a line across there now, there's no way that would happen. So I'll watch, and again, I'm waiting to put my rods in for dark, my bivvy up, and then I'll get something nice out to eat. Yeah. It's usually a steak or a big pork chop or something like that. But there won't be any accompaniments though. No. It'll just be like 12 ounces of steak.
Caveman.
Yeah, I'll just eat it with my hands, and that'll be that. Because I don't even on the lakes where, like there, everything's in the car right behind you, I still fish like it isn't.
Yeah.
And I've from loads of different venues that I've fished over the years, pot noodles your pal because it's so light. Yeah. It is a meal. And I'll always have them in my bag and I never eat them. They're always there though.
Yeah.
There'll always be 2 like curry flavoured ones that I just never eat. Because I always forget about, most of my sessions are 24 hours. I forget about day 2.
Yeah.
So I'll get my energy drink and my little snack to get me through the day, and I'll have my big chunk of meat on the night time. And then I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, just caffeine today then, is it?
Yeah. But I must have like a thing. I must have been really unkind to rats or something, because the other day, the lake I've been fishing and doing the bailiffing on, they provide food and that there as well. So it's easy for me. I don't need to take any food with me. Just take some water and just I have one meal that they bring round. And if I want breakfast, I'd do that as well. So, but I had the lake to myself, and my mum's other half was going to come down and fish the night as well. And I thought, do you know what? I stopped in a petrol station because I needed some fuel, and I picked up a pack of Maryland cookies, 99p, on offer. I thought, do you know what? I fancy them. I'm going to take them and I'll have them. Anyway, he didn't end up getting down there till late, so I sat and just helped him like set up and everything like that. And we just chatted, and then it got really cold like it has been, and I was like, mate, I'm too cold to be sitting out here. I'm going to retreat to the bag. So I got back to the slip bag, and I thought I could eat them cookies, but I'm gonna save them till tomorrow because I'm on here till midday. There'll be a little treat in the morning or whatever with a hot drink. And I'm sitting in my bed chair, and I thought, I can smell them cookies. I'm sure I can smell them cookies. I don't know if it's just because I want them or not. And I was like, no, I can't go to sleep. I think I can smell the cookies. Like, I'm going to have to check the bag. So I only had like a thick plastic, what I'd call a thick plastic bag. Not one that breaks as soon as you walk out the shop, but like one that's going to do you a couple of trips. And I put my hand, rummage around in it. I thought, there's my bottle of Volvic. There's nothing else in there. I was like, I must have put the cookies in my actual tackle bag, my rucksack. So I got my head torch on, and I was like, I can definitely smell these cookies now. And I look under there, and they've been in the bag, the rats, pulled out the bag of cookies, shredded the bag of cookies open, and eaten all of them bar 2. And I was only gone out to swim, like I weren't even gone out to swim long because I was coming back to do bits. I thought they must have been taking them. There was no way they were eating them there, but they just rinsed me, and I thought there was 2 left. My missus went, you didn't eat them, did you? I was like, yeah. I was like, no. They went. I thought, do you know what? Go and find them.
The exact same thing happened to me on a feature like years ago. Back when the Heron's Point at Farlows, the pub on the end of the point. Well, I was there doing a feature with Ellis and Bog, and me and Ellis were on Heron's Point. And, we spent most of the night in the warm, playing pool. And all I'd got to eat was a pack of biscuits. I was going to have half for my dinner and half like the next day. Well, Ellis had cooked me up like a bacon sarnie or something for dinner because we were, have a couple of pints in there at this point. You got to eat something. I was like, oh, right then. When I woke up in the morning, I was like, I'm starving, Woke up in the morning, it's absolutely freezing, horrible cold. Like one of the coldest periods I've ever spent on the bank. I thought, I've got them biscuits, I'll have them with a cup of tea, and that'd be just nice. And the rats, the pack was in the perfect shape, like it was still full. The whole thing was still intact.
Yeah.
Of course, I picked it and it just folded. So, huh? Like they all fallen out the bottom. Nope.
Yeah.
Just eaten, or literally like eating the bottom circle off, and then just took them out one by one after. Yeah.
It's crazy. I had my boilies out as well. They'd gone past the boilies that night and thought, do you know what? I don't want fish food. I want people food. Them cookies they're decent. I'll have some of that.
Well, if you've ever tried to catch mice and stuff, you have to be really particular with what bait you give up.
Yeah, like peanut butters and chocolates and things, and they done me that night, and they come back as well. That's the thing. They came back because it was one of them cold nights as well.
Come back for the other two.
But I reckon they did. But what had happened? My mum, always being my mum, I don't see her that often, but she sent down and she goes, I know Matt, he'll go fishing and he won't bring no food with him. So she cooked up a bacon and sausage roll in some foil and sent it down with her other half. So he got there, he goes, oh, look, your mum brought this down, do you want it? I was like, yeah, go on. So I ate this thing and folded up the foil and put it in my pocket. And they come back in the night, because I took that jacket off because I couldn't sleep in it, put a hoodie on. And again, it was a brutal cold night. The ones where you think, I'm in a bit of a pickle tonight, I think, if I get out, And when I woke up in the morning and put stuff away, they'd got in the pocket, luckily not damaged the pocket because it was my new jacket, the new Neoteric jacket that I love. And they'd gone in the pocket, gently took the foil packet out and shredded it into 4 million pieces, just to get the remaining crumbs. They were proper hungry. So I spoke to the owner in the morning. I said, mate, the rats have become a problem. So
you need some pest control.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, man, you got to live with them. I can't be angry, because they live there. But it's just another obstacle in the way of my fishing. But Matt, I think it's pretty much us coming to an end now. It's getting late now. It's been really good having you on, mate. Definitely, we're going to get out for a perch session, but also we've got to speak to Rob and get some dates booked in for the river season that's fast approaching to get you on them rudd, mate. We're going to do that. We're going to have a good rudd session.
Yeah, they look amazing.
Yeah.
I saw a rudd this year that was £1.75. I was just blown away. I was like, that's not a rudd. Rudd are like the things that big that are just a nightmare. Make bait, like live bait fishing, difficult for everything else. And then you see a great big one like that, so what?
Yeah.
Wow.
And the colour of them as well. Yeah. They're just crazy, mate. And they're not going to be there forever. Like, all the fishing, the drains are full of otters and stuff, and they're not going to be there forever. They're not going to be there forever in that size.
I definitely, with a lot of river fish, I definitely subscribe to that. They will not be there forever, and if you're lucky enough to find something special like that, go and make hay, because it is. I've had it with venues close by to here, some nature reserves and stuff, and the fish is just not there anymore, and it is devastating, because you grow up your whole life knowing there's some sort of secret fish in that lake.
Yeah.
And you go up there one year, the cormorants have completely decimated their food source, and they're all gone. And it's just
Yeah, definitely got to make hay while the sun shines on them.
Yeah.
And
get out there before the rats eat your biscuits.
They start eating the rudd. But yeah, mate, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you've enjoyed it and that. And I'll start editing up and we'll get it live. And yeah, we've got a few more guests lined up, so should be good. And a few others that I've planned to approach as well. So we're putting out the benchmarks for these episodes, and yeah, the feedback's good, and the view time, not only just on YouTube, obviously we're on Apple Podcast and Spotify. It tends to be a bit delayed on Apple because they like to check everything, whereas Spotify just let any old rubbish on. And but the view time is really good, and I thought about just doing it on YouTube, but then so many people have said, "Oh, stuck it on." Like Ellis, he says, "I'm not on really the YouTube thing, but while I'm at work, if you've got it on Spotify, you got a link." I sent it, and he said, "It's fantastic, mate. Like, really enjoyed it, and I can actually the stats that you get back on like the Spotify and the Apple, they tell you how long people listen to it, and out of I think within like the first week there was something like 47 listeners or something, but they'd listen to 98% of the podcast, Whereas on YouTube, you get your stats back, and most of my retention is like, I don't know, a 15-minute video, you might get 4 minutes retention, where people just skip through to see the big one, or whatever.
They fast forward to see the action.
Yeah, so I'm really, it's not about stats, but it's nice because you get some good feedback about are people listening to it all. If I was putting together, we're going 2 hours 20 minutes now. If I'm putting together a 2 hour and 20 minute podcast, and we're taking 2 hours and 20 minutes out of our time plus another 5-6 hours for me to edit it up, I'm not going to bother if people are only going to not interested, only going to listen to it for 10 minutes. It's just not.
No.
It's not viable. As much as I enjoy it, and you enjoy it, and the people who do, if they're not going to listen to it all, then there's not much point.
Well, I'll raise this glass to everybody who's sat and listened to me and Matt for all this period of time. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.